Brennan Othmann makes a rock-solid debut in the Rangers' 5-1 win over the Islanders. We talk about why he must remain in the lineup going forward. Plus, what is the latest on Adam Fox and K'Andre Miller after both sustained injuries?
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1257 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, and we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So I posted a quick, 1-minute video last night on YouTube, after the game ended, just kind of recapping, giving my quick thoughts on what happened in this game. And my prevailing thought was, wasn't this nice? Wasn't it nice to just have a Ranger win where things mostly went well, the team mostly performed well, guys looked like they had their heads in the game, guys actually looked engaged, they played a physical brand of hockey, they were opportunistic, they got some secondary scoring, just a very, very enjoyable 2 points, a very, very enjoyable victory for the New York Rangers. And it stands out like a sore thumb in a season like this, because we just haven't had many wins like that. But to me, that was the big thing for me. It was awesome in the third period, being up 5-1, just watching the final couple of minutes tick off and not having to be, stressed or worried or anything like that. The Rangers had this one in the bag. They got the job done. Wasn't perfect, but again, it's a heck of a lot better than what we've seen for the most part from this team this season. But of course, one of the big things that they did before this game, and something that kind of had a lot of people talking, was, of course, the promotion of former first-round pick Brennan Othmann to the New York Rangers. He, of course, played in 3 games last season, but this was his season debut this year. Part of the reason why he was in the lineup is because of the injury to Chris Kreider. He misses his second straight game with an upper body injury. I like to think that Othmann would have been in the lineup regardless, but there's certainly no guarantees of that, especially knowing this Ranger team. I'll discuss that in greater detail in just a second. But as far as and we'll get to Othmann's performance in a little bit too. We're going to talk about the entire fourth line and how great they did. But first, I wanted to focus on just the move in and of itself, the promotion of Othmann to the Rangers. It had to happen. It absolutely, positively needed to happen. The Rangers, for the most part this season, as we discussed on here, have been kind of in la-la land. I mean, I don't know that there's really a better way to put it than that. They just don't seem to bring the same kind of consistent intensity, energy that you need game in and game out to be successful in this league. And with that being the case, this is a team, especially after the first 2 games after the Four Nations and how they played there. I know they at least beat the Penguins, but they were not good performances. This team, perhaps as much or more so than at any other point during this season, and I don't say that lightly, but this team needed a shot of energy. And when you bring up a young player like Brennan Othmann, he can presumably give that to you because he's going to get called up. He wants to stay in the NHL, so he's going to be hungry. We know that he plays with a certain amount of edge, a certain amount of attitude out there, a certain amount of physicality. Those are all things that this Ranger team desperately needs, and hopefully Othmann can give it to them. He certainly gave them some of that last night in this game. And again, we'll break down his performance in just a second. But, the other reason as far as why to call up Brennan Othmann, it feels to me like there are way too many players on this Ranger team who have just gotten far too comfortable with their standing in the lineup. And hockey's kind of interesting in that way because, you go online, and I've done this too, but a lot of Ranger fans will say, scratch this guy, scratch that guy, bench this guy, bench that guy. You can only scratch and bench so many players because at the most, you're going to have 23 players on your roster and 20 of them are going to dress. So there's only so many healthy scratchings to go around. But when you call up somebody like Brennan Othmann and he comes up and he's hungry and he plays a solid brand of hockey as he did in this game last night, maybe all of a sudden those players on the Rangers that were a little too comfortable with their role in the lineup, with their role in the top 6, with their role on the power play, with their role in the top 4 defensemen. I mean, Othmann's a forward, but you know what I'm saying here. Maybe all those guys decide to step it up a little bit. Maybe they decide to step on the gas a little bit because they know they've got this former first rounder, this hungry rookie who's stepping up and trying to claim his spot in the lineup. So I don't know. Maybe that'll convince some of these guys to back check or something, right? So there's that reason too, just to honestly make some of the other players in the Rangers just a little bit uncomfortable where, okay, I got to step on the gas and I got to play my A game to hold on to my spot in the top 6 to get the kind of ice time that I'm used to getting because they've got this rookie that they just called up here who they obviously like, and he's going to be hungry. So there's that. The other thing, very simple reason for why Brennan Othmann needed to be called up is that he's been on fire in the AHL. And I think it's a good thing in sports when players get rewarded for good play. I mean, I think that's still a thing in sports, right? Sometimes the Rangers make me wonder that. The Yankees make me question that like nobody's business. I mean, I don't even know what's going on over there with that. But bottom line, yes, Brennan Othmann has been awesome in the AHL with the Hartford Wolfpack. He obviously had to deal with an injury earlier this season that cost him some time. But in 27 games with the Hartford Wolfpack this season, Brennan Othmann has 12 goals, 8 assists, 20 points. He's also a -1, but he's especially been on fire recently. In his last 13 games, he has 9 goals and 2 assists. So definitely deserving of a call up. Again, I guess I'm kind of old school, old fashioned in that way. I think when a player does well, they deserve to be rewarded for it. Just like when a player does poorly or gives you a lackluster effort, they deserve to be punished for that. Very, very simple stuff, but it's nice to see the Rangers following that line of reasoning there, at least for this game in the promotion of Brennan Othmann. Another reason to call up Othmann, he can help you in the short term and certainly in the long term. Like we mentioned earlier, this team needed a spark badly, and Othmann certainly has a chance of, giving the Rangers exactly that. And even if Othmann only does so much to help the Rangers this season, even if he only has so big of a role, even if they're only going to leave him on the 4th line, even if most nights he's only going to play 9, 10, 11 minutes, you, at the very least, if nothing else, and I would like to see him get more minutes than that for the record, but even if that's the case, even if that's all that he gets, you're still getting him some valuable seasoning. You're still getting him ready for the start of next year. The Rangers certainly still want to make the playoffs this year, but I do think as an organization, they have one eye on the very next season. That's what the JT Miller trade was all about for me. Again, they want Miller to help them get to the playoffs this year, but it's about retooling this roster for next season. It's the same thing with Brennan Othmann. Now, Othmann, of course, did get the 3 games last year, and I like how the Rangers do that, get him a cup of coffee, in the NHL and just let him get his feet wet, so to speak. But now Othmann gets called up with 25 games remaining in the season. I believe it was 25, so that would mean it's now 24. He has a chance to play in all 25 of these games down the stretch here and get an invaluable amount of seasoning, of experience in the NHL. And then just like that, he is more ready to go for opening night next season. And that should be what the Rangers are planning to have happen, and it's what they should be hoping happens because this is your guy. This is your former first-round pick. He'd been killing it in the AHL. The only thing to do was to call him up, and the Rangers hope, and maybe even their expectation should be, that Brennan Othmann never plays another AHL game. I'm not saying there's no way that's going to happen. They might be sending him back down to Hartford right now as we speak. I don't know. But I would like to see Othmann get a lot of leash, a lot of rope here at the end of the season. I think he can help this team right here and right now. And even if he doesn't, you have a chance to get him ready for next season, which I think is even more important because that's the season where I think the Rangers are going to dig back in and, really go for it after they retool the roster a little bit. So that's where things stand. Like I said, in a perfect world for the Rangers, for Othmann himself, for all of us fans that want to see the prospects get a chance, in a perfect world, he's up for good. He plays the rest of the season. He does well. He does as well as he did in this game last night, and he never gets sent back down. And he's ready to go and ready to play, I would say, at least a top 9 role at the start of next season, right from opening night. No reason to start him in the Wolfpack next year if he does well with the Rangers this year. And then you'll get people that say like, well, Othmann, he might be a defensive liability. Okay, maybe. I mean, he's not perfect. He's 22 years old. He just played his 4th career game in the NHL. And as far as defensive liability is concerned, this whole team is a walking, talking defensive liability. I mean, have you seen this team play hockey this season, trying to defend the rush, trying to play some kind of defense in front of Igor Shesterkin or Jonathan Quick? It hasn't been pretty. So as far as Othmann's defense being a weakness, and by all accounts, it does sound like that's the area of his game that needs the most improvement, is just his overall defense. I'm fine with that. Let him learn on the fly. Like I said, he'll probably come up and do better. If for no other reason, then he'll just give you more effort than other guys have given you. He'll probably do better than some of the guys that have struggled defensively this season anyway. So let him learn on the fly. Let him get better. Let him take his lumps. I do think, the positives certainly outweigh the negatives when it comes to this, call up of Brennan Othmann. And the other thing, I touched on this very briefly a minute ago, but, I like to think that even if Kreider was healthy and was able to play in this game, that the Rangers still would have put Brennan Othmann into the lineup, not over Kreider. Kreider certainly would have played, but Othmann's in the lineup over VZ, Brodzinski. I know Brodzinski got 2 goals in this game, but I don't think too many of us saw that coming. I like to think that Othmann would have played regardless. I'm not 100% sure of that because, again, this is the Rangers, and Arthur Kaliev was a healthy scratch. I know some people like him, but I can't make any sense out of the Rangers going with Kaliev, who's only 1 year older than Othmann, mind you, and who was acquired on waivers because the Kings literally could not get anybody to give them anything in exchange for Kaliev, right? So how are you going to go with that guy over your own homegrown, first round, highly thought of prospect? That wouldn't make any sense. And I swear, if the Rangers do that, that might be the move that breaks me. But you get the idea. The bottom line is I think Brennan Othmann deserves to be out there. I think he should be out there. And I think it can benefit the Rangers certainly in the short term and even more importantly, in the long term. Didn't really like the fact that he was on the 4th line when I saw the lineup. He's out there with Rempe and Brodzinski. But hey, clearly that trio made the most of it. They were absolutely phenomenal in this game. Brennan Othmann, obviously he didn't mope about it or anything. He went out there and played his role. He was on the ice for a lot of goals. He almost scored his first goal. There was some debate over whether he had deflected Brodzinski's shot or not. To my knowledge, that goal is still being credited to Brodzinski. But like I said, a very successful first night for Brennan Othmann. He's right where he should be. He's right where he needs to be. And he's where the Rangers should keep him for the rest of this season. So we're going to keep everything rolling in just a second. I want to shift our attention to the 4th line in general. Certainly Othmann was part of that. But, the Rangers got a lot of depth scoring in this game. The 4th line was absolutely outstanding. Urho Vaakanainen with a 3-point night. That is the definition of secondary scoring. We're going to talk about all that, give those guys their props in just a second. And then we're also going to talk again a little bit about the injuries to Adam Fox and Keandre Miller and what that could mean for the Rangers going forward. We'll get to all that good stuff in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Trade Coffee. If you're like a lot of people, your mornings have to start with a good cup of coffee. But a lot of people get tired of settling for grocery store brands that just were not cutting it. That's why a lot of people turn to Trade. And let me tell you, their coffee is next level. Trade is the #1 specialty coffee marketplace in the U.S., bringing you fresh coffee from over 50 of the country's top roasters. Their experts have taste-tested thousands of coffees, curating over 450 amazing roasts. Whether you're new to coffee or know exactly what you like, they'll handpick the perfect match for you. The subscription makes it so easy. No more last-minute grocery store runs or settling for whatever is on the shelf. And if you don't love your first bag, no worries. Trade will replace it for free until they get it just right. Right now, Trade is exclusively offering our listeners 40% off your first order at drinktrade.com/LockedOnNHL. That's drinktrade.com/LockedOnNHL for 40% off your first order. drinktrade.com/LockedOnNHL. All right, we just want to take a minute to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And for the everydayers, as some of you are aware, I will be going on vacation soon. So I'm going to miss an episode this week, and I'll also miss an episode next week. But it's okay. We're going to have some pre-recorded episodes ready to go for you guys next week. We're also going to have an episode after the Rangers play the Maple Leafs. That'll be our next episode, and we'll post that after that game is over. And then once I get back from vacation, the first episode back that I record, it'll be available on either Friday or Saturday. It will cover everything that the Rangers did or did not do at the trade deadline. So definitely looking forward to that. But for right now, continuing to talk about this game, we've already talked about Othmann quite a bit, and he obviously had a big night as part of the Rangers' 4th line that really delivered in this game. The 4th line plus Urho Vaakanainen all absolutely went off in this game. First of all, I think just a quick roll call, a quick rundown of the depth scoring that the Rangers got in this game. You got Jonny Brodzinski in and out of the lineup for a whole bunch of years, in and out of the league for a whole bunch of years, finally seems to have at least secured his spot on the New York Ranger roster. But you guys know, there's times where he's a healthy scratch and then he'll get in and then he's a scratch again. You know how it goes with Jonny Brodzinski, but he ends up with 2 goals and an assist in this game. Just missed the hat trick. For a second, I thought he had the hat trick, but as it turns out, that puck was deflected by Matt Rempe. So Rempe, of course, gets a goal on a deflection. And then you've got Vaakanainen. I mean, where did this come from, right? I think Vaakanainen has overall done a pretty solid job as a third pair defenseman. He's had maybe a couple games that have been a little bit shaky, But for your number 6 defenseman, I think you could probably do worse than Urho Vaakanainen. And at the end of the season, RFA with arbitration rights, so you got to think the Rangers will get him re-signed for a pretty reasonable cost. But bottom line in this game, he comes through offensively. A goal and 2 assists. That was the first 3-point game of Vaakanainen's career. He also got the first goal of the game. And then you've got Ryan Lindgren, speaking of secondary scoring, with 2 assists. Lindgren now has 2 goals this season, a career-high 17 assists, and a career-high 19 points. And this is something that I tweeted out last night. I'll repeat it here for anybody that might have missed it. Lindgren's had a tough season, and I think that a lot of people have certainly made their opinions clear on that. We've talked about it for sure on this podcast. I think for one night, though, it's okay to feel good for Ryan Lindgren. He played a really good game even outside of the assists, and the fact that he does get a new career high in points is a pretty cool thing. Props to Ryan Lindgren for that. With Lindgren, the one thing that's kind of kept me from like unloading on him on here the way that I have on some other Ranger players is with Lindgren, I don't think it's usually a lack of effort. I think the guy is beat to hell from the style of hockey that he's played over the years. I think that's what's causing problems for him more so than anything else. And, you know, that being the case, it's hard for me to really crush him, even though I will admit, because I know that some people don't like Lindgren. I know some people want this team to move on from Ryan Lindgren. He has not had a good season. To me, I think it's probably the weakest season that he's had since he's come into the NHL. But like I said, for one night, for one game, let's give the guy his props and let's feel good for him getting a new career high in points. Very cool thing. But again, you know, the secondary scoring, that was a theme of this game for sure. When Vaakanainen scored to open the scoring of this game, he made it 1-0 Rangers. I don't know about you guys, but I kind of got this feeling right when that happened that, you know what, this is going to be a good night. The Rangers are going to play well in this one. They're going to find a way to win the game. They might even do so in kind of a lopsided fashion. Obviously, you don't know for sure, and it's always good to score. They're up 1-0 at that point, so that's obviously nice. But it just kind of, I don't know, maybe it's just kind of one of those gut feelings that you get. But seeing your number 6 defenseman, who is not known at all for his offensive prowess, to see him, step up with a goal there, get the ball rolling a little bit, it just felt like it was going to be a good night, and it was. And he ends up adding a couple of assists later. He had an assist where he went into the corner. It was a crazy sequence, and the reason it was crazy is because Mika Zibanejad finished his check in one corner. That might have been the most surprising thing that happened all night. Forget about Vaakanainen getting 3 points, but Mika Zibanejad, solid check, solid hit in the corner, knocked the guy off the puck. It goes around to the other corner, and that's when Vaakanainen pinched, got it back to Mika. Mika passed in front to JT Miller, and the goal was scored. But Vaakanainen obviously had a big hand in that one as well. And then we have, of course, Jonny Brodzinski talking about secondary scoring. Again, this guy is in and out of the lineup the entire season. The first goal that he scored was essentially just the result of really good puck movement in the offensive zone, and the Rangers essentially refusing to give up possession. There was some good forechecking to start this whole sequence in the right direction for the Rangers. But the second goal that Brodzinski scores, this is the one that I really want to break down, because this is the one that was set up by just heart and hustle, basically. There is no way that Jonny Brodzinski scores this goal here if it was not for the hustle and the effort of Jonny Brodzinski. Brodzinski got this whole thing started. He got in there on the forecheck. He went into the offensive zone like he was fired out of a cannon. He got to the puck before any of the Islanders could get there. Basically just, skated right by them, got to it first. And no joke, after this, the Rangers never gave up possession of the puck until the goal was scored. And we get about 6, 7, 8 different passes in the offensive zone by the Rangers. And eventually, you've got Jonny Brodzinski scoring from far away to give the Rangers, or rather increase the Ranger lead to 3-1 with 47 seconds left in the period. A huge goal at a huge spot in the game. We've gotten on the Rangers, certainly I have, about falling asleep in the critical moments, those opening minutes of a period, those closing minutes of a period. Nice to see the Rangers actually get one in the final minute of a period. And this is when the Rangers seem to really take control of the game. I know there's going to be some people that say like, oh, well, the 2-goal lead is the most dangerous lead in hockey. No, it's not. The 1-goal lead is the most dangerous lead in hockey. But bottom line, this is what felt like, a big time, I don't want to say like a knockout punch because it's only the first period, but a big time blow landed by the Rangers to the Islanders right before the teams went into the locker room. This was absolutely huge. Gave them a 3-1 lead. And then obviously they were on their way after that. And then we think that Brodzinski ends up with a hat trick. Like I mentioned, what would have been his third goal of the game was actually a deflection by Matt Rempe. And I'll repeat something else that I tweeted out during this game last night. That was a tough moment for the Rempe can't play hockey crowd. Again, there's going to be people that love Rempe. There's people that don't like him. They don't get all the hype. They don't like what he's all about. Fine. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. Certainly respect everybody's opinion. But for all the Rempe naysayers, and I'm talking about Ranger fans, because certainly, fans of other teams are not going to like Matt Rempe, and I can completely understand that. But for fans of the Rangers, show me like all these other fourth line players that make such a bigger impact on the game than Matt Rempe does. I don't think those players exist. Now, there's guys with different skill sets. There's guys that might kill penalties and might score a little bit more often than Matt Rempe does. But I don't know. I mean, to me, Rempe is one of the more impactful fourth line players in the league. That's before he even really develops the other parts of his game. He's so big, so strong, and so feared out there that, teams are going to be hesitant when he's on the ice. Teams are certainly going to have to keep their head up, keep their head on a swivel. If he starts developing other parts of his game, if he starts adding a little bit of offense, if he starts establishing himself as a solid net front presence guy, I mean, he's going to be a very valuable player to this team. Again, I don't think he'll ever be a star, nothing even close, to be honest. But could he eventually be like a third line player? I don't think that's impossible with Matt Rempe. He's not there yet, but I think it's at least possible that he gets there. And I would like to see him do what he did here, park himself in front of the net a little bit more often. Because, I mean, good luck moving that guy, right? If you're an opposing defenseman, how are you going to get Matt Rempe out of the crease? Explain that to me, right? And here, some awesome hand-eye coordination results in a deflection goal for Matt Rempe. So good stuff there all around. Happy to see him have a strong game. Rempe ended up with a career-high 11 minutes and 30 seconds of ice time. Very well deserved. Something else that Rempe did in this game while we're on the subject, couple of different times where he got in there on the forecheck very aggressively and was able to get to a puck, able to knock his opponent off the puck. And then he would get possession, and then just a very simple play, but he would get possession behind the net and then just send it back to the blue line to one of the defensemen. And at that point, the Rangers could go to work in the offensive zone. This happened at least 3 times in this game. So again, great game by Matt Rempe. Awesome season debut. I was going to say NHL debut. Awesome season debut by Brennan Othmann. He ends up with 12 minutes and 2 seconds. Again, I'd like to see him a little bit higher in the lineup, but that'll hopefully come with time. And given the fact that the Rangers just played, honestly, probably one of their better games of the season, I don't think they'll mess with the lineup too much going into the next one. They may not have a choice as it pertains to their defenseman, but we'll talk about that in just a little bit. And then the other member of the Ranger fourth line, Jonny Brodzinski, he ends up with 13 minutes, 14 seconds of ice time. Obviously, the 2 goals, the assist. And only 3 times this season has Jonny Brodzinski gotten more ice time than he got last night. So again, nice to just see these guys get rewarded. Just a hell of a game by the Ranger fourth line. They were absolutely fantastic. One more thing I'll mention here, though, while we're talking about all this secondary scoring, it's all well and good, right? We love to see this. It's great to see other guys step up. It's great to see hardworking players get rewarded with a goal, an assist, whatever it might be. But I'm also going to throw down the gauntlet and issue a little bit of a challenge here to the Rangers star players, because a lot of them didn't really do a whole lot in this game. The Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere line, I do like the fact that those guys are back together. They didn't grade out very well in this game. That chart goes out that essentially, measures how well every player did, and they were near the bottom of the list, all 3 of them, for the Rangers. But I will say, even though they didn't have a great game, there were little flashes in this game of the kind of stuff that we saw from these guys last season. Just some really crisp, creative passing in the offensive zone, some lightning quick passes. There was one sequence I remember for sure where Panarin went up the left side, veered to his right to the center of the ice, went to Lafreniere, passed to him along the boards. Lafreniere immediately, lightning quick pass to Vincent Trocheck on the crease. Trocheck just not quite able to bury it. Panarin got right to the rebound, and he tried to fire one home. He hit the post. So there were a couple instances like that in this game that give me some hope that maybe they're kind of finding their legs a little bit as they all get back together on the same line, and maybe that line will have a big game in the next one against Toronto. I have a feeling they could. They'll at least go out there and hopefully at least contribute to at least one goal. We shall see. But in just a second, we're going to keep everything rolling. Going to talk a little bit about the injuries. 3 different Ranger defensemen went down at different points of this game. Now, Braden Schneider, of course, got back into the game, but obviously this leaves the Rangers in a little bit of a pickle as far as what to do in the next game if players are forced to miss time. We'll discuss all that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there is no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. It's awesome to use FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether you're backing your team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, you never feel like you miss a chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. I want to go ahead and close out today's episode by talking a little bit about some of the injuries that this team sustained in this game last night. You know, we're just not allowed to have nice things, are we? I just got done talking about what a great win this was, what a complete win this was. It was mostly a full 60 minutes for the Rangers. You could maybe nitpick little patches of time here and there throughout this game. But for the most part, again, just a really solid, steady win for this team. But of course, we have to have a little bit of a damper put on it by the fact that the Rangers had three different defensemen sustain injuries: Fox, Miller, and Schneider. Now, Schneider came back after just a couple of minutes, but the other two were both ruled out. The one thing that I'm going to say here, as far as a best case scenario for this Ranger team, because I haven't seen any definitive update on either Adam Fox or K'Andre Miller. So in a best case scenario, it's possible that the Rangers knew what kind of a game they were in. They knew they were up 5-1 going into the third period, up 5-1 when Adam Fox gets injured. Maybe they saw, okay, we're in complete control of this game. We've got this thing pretty much in the bag. We're not going to throw Miller and or Fox back out there just to play things safely, to err on the side of caution. That's at least possible. We don't know for sure that that's the case because the Rangers and all NHL teams are so vague when it comes to their injuries. But that's at least possible. We'll acknowledge that possibility right off the bat here without seeing any definitive update on either player. I will say, though, I got to throw this out there, too. Some of you are going to just absolutely love this. One of the first thoughts that I had when these injuries happened, when we saw Miller get ruled out, when we saw Adam Fox crumble down to the ice in obvious pain, when we saw Braden Schneider have to leave this game for a brief period, one of my first thoughts was, well, Ryan Lindgren is here to stay through the trade deadline. And you can look at that as a good thing. You can look at that as a bad thing. But if there's a situation where Adam Fox and K'Andre Miller are both going to miss significant time, then I think that greatly decreases the chances that Drury will trade Ryan Lindgren before the trade deadline. Now, again, as it always does, it might depend on what the offers are for Lindgren. But, you know, if you're only going to get like a fourth rounder for him, forget it. Might as well just hang on to him. If you're going to get like a second rounder for him, okay, you got something to think about. And I think at that point, it might make sense to pull the trigger, regardless of the injuries to Fox and Miller. But the bottom line, you know, that blue line for the Rangers, which has already struggled quite a bit this season at you know, certain chunks of the season, it just got weaker if you don't have Adam Fox and you don't have K'Andre Miller. And I realize people have gotten on Adam Fox this season, myself included. I realize people have gotten on K'Andre Miller this season, myself included. But you can't tell me that this team becomes better with those two out of the lineup and guys like Chad Ruhwedel and Connor Mackey taking their place. Like, there's just no way. So it does hurt the team for sure. As far as like an update on their situation, K'Andre Miller, lower body injury. He played only 2 shifts in the second period and then left with the injury. He was ruled out at the start of the third period, or at least that's when we, the audience, found out about it. Maybe the Rangers knew a little bit before then. But after the game, Peter Laviolette didn't offer much, just said that both Miller and Fox were going to be evaluated. And that might well be the truth because the game had just ended. As far as Adam Fox goes, this one really makes me nervous. And again, he's been shaky lately, but he had a big goal against the Penguins to win the game. And this is not a better Ranger team with Adam Fox not in the lineup. But the bottom line, he actually took a penalty on this play to kind of add insult to injury. Brennan Othmann ended up serving the penalty. But Fox goes down, lands very awkwardly on his left shoulder. His legs were kind of tangled up funny. It was just a very awkward fall to the ice and a pretty rough landing there for Fox. He was in pretty obvious pain, went right to the bench, went right to the locker room. So we'll see what happens there. But obviously never a good time to lose, one of your top defensemen. That is for sure. And we actually ended up in a situation where the Rangers, for only a few minutes, but nevertheless, this was the case, they had only 3 healthy defensemen because Miller got hurt in the second period, Fox got hurt in the third period, and then Schneider got hurt in the third period. He took a shot right off of his knee while killing a penalty. He could barely stand up out there. He eventually was able to hobble his way over to the bench once the Rangers had cleared the zone. But briefly here, the Rangers are down to Ryan Lindgren, Will Borgen, Urho, Vaakanainen. Those are the three defensemen. Those are the only three defensemen available. Now, again, Schneider did eventually come back, but it kind of got me thinking, like, okay, so what do you do here? Like, you can't play with just three defensemen. Four maybe, because you just have all four guys play approximately half of the game. How do you even go about trying to distribute the ice time with three defensemen? They're all going to play 2/3 of whatever's left in the game. We had every combo. We had Vaakanainen Borgen, we had Lindgren Borgen, Vaakanainen. They were all out there, and Schneider eventually did get back. But it kind of got me wondering, like, which forward would you ask to go back to defense? And I must have missed this, but apparently Mika Zibanejad did have a shift at defense. He moved to the back end and was kind of in the de facto defenseman role. And Peter Laviolette has previously said that, if there was a situation like this, because something like this happened last year where they were down a couple of defensemen. But it sounds like for Laviolette, Mika Zibanejad would be his emergency defenseman, so to speak. But just kind of an interesting situation there with only three defensemen available to the Rangers for a brief spell in this game. Of course, with these injuries, it also begs the question, if Miller and or Fox cannot go on Friday against Toronto, then which two defensemen step into the lineup? And we don't know for sure. I was joking on Twitter, and some of you were commenting on this too, that even if Schneider, Fox, and Miller all miss the next game, that the Rangers still would not allow Zach Jones to go into the lineup. I don't actually believe that. I think for sure, if we see Fox and Miller miss the next game, and we assume that Schneider will be out there since he finished this game, I think for sure Zach Jones will be one of the two defensemen that steps into the lineup. But that would be just absolutely unreal if they didn't let him into the lineup after both of these guys get hurt. So there's your lefty defenseman. If you want a righty defenseman as the other substitute that's going to step into the lineup in place of Fox and Miller, you're kind of in a bit of a tough situation here, because if you look at the AHL roster right now, the only right-handed defensemen are Chad Ruhwedel and Casey Fitzgerald. I mean, I suppose they're both options. Personally, I would like to see Matthew Robertson make his NHL debut. Do I think that's going to happen? No. The Rangers have had plenty of chances to do that over the last handful of seasons here. They've never pulled the trigger. Robertson was up with the Rangers not too long ago, never got into a game. But I think what they'll probably do, again, Zach Jones will go in. I think, honestly, you'll probably see Chad Ruhwedel because, again, he's a righty. And I just think that, being a veteran that has some trust from the coaching staff, we saw him in 5 games last year, just 1 game this year. But I think there's a pretty good chance it would be Ruhwedel. And I honestly, as much as I would love to crush the Rangers for favoring, this 34-year-old veteran over their own homegrown prospect, in this case, I'm not going to go too crazy about it because the Rangers are still playing meaningful games. I know people are down on this team, frustrated with a whole bunch of players. Facts are facts. This team is 2 points out of a playoff spot. They're still trying to get there. I don't think they should sell their entire future and all their draft picks and prospects to just squeak into the playoffs this year. But I do think they should do everything they can to push forward and try to get in. And with that being the case, I'm okay if they want to go with Ruhwedel. I'd prefer Robertson, but I'm okay with Ruhwedel. The big problem that I'll have is if the Rangers fall out of the playoff chase at some point, they're mathematically eliminated with 3, 4, 5 games left, whatever it might be, and we still don't see Matthew Robertson. At that point, I just don't even know what we're doing because those games will be largely meaningless. This is your own homegrown prospect. You took him in the second round. It's time to at least have a look at him and see what he can do. If he's terrible, he's terrible. At least you find out. At least you get a firsthand look at him at the NHL level, and at least that makes it maybe a little bit easier to move on in the offseason if you decide you want to go in a different direction. So, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. As far as now, if Fox misses time, one more thing we got to cover here real quick. It also begs the question of, who would quarterback the top power play unit? I would think probably Miller would just bump up from the second unit to the top unit. We will see, and then maybe Zach Jones is on the second power play unit. I'd kind of like to see Jones with the top unit, but I know how this team operates, and that's just not going to happen. So, yeah, I figure we can call it there. If you guys would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @jchick17. Once again, @jchik17. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.